Dear songwriter, I recently finalized the song after working on it for 18 months. And as you might imagine, I learned a lot from that experience. So, in this episode, I'm going to break down why it took me 18 months to write this song, the 3 lessons I learned from it, which include 1, the need to put a song on the shelf, 2, limiting the amount of people you show the song to as you're writing it, as well as 3, the benefits to performing the unfinished song along the way. And I'm doing this in hopes that you yourself can implement some of these strategies to either help you accept that some songs may take longer than others, and or use these lessons to anticipate the roadblocks that I ran into so that it doesn't take you that long. My name is Connor Frost. I'm a professional songwriting mentor who's helped hundreds of songwriters now to write their first collection of songs. And this is Dear Songwriter, the podcast to help you confidently write and release your music so that you can live your most musical and creative life. Let's get into it. All right, welcome. Episode 100. I was trying to think, what could I do for episode 100? And I came up with nothing. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make this another day in the office. And that is exactly what I did. So I'm bringing you this episode, which is highlighting a recent experience that I had writing this song that finally, after 18 months, is completed in terms of the song being written, right? It has not been released yet. It has not even really been brought into the production stages yet, but the song itself is written. So why did it take me so long? Let's start with that question. I think the first thing, if we were to zoom out, this song is about a topic that is really important to me, about this idea of not fitting in to certain places over the course of one's childhood and life, largely due to their racial background as well as the surroundings that they grew up in. And because this was a topic that was near and dear to me, I do think I put a lot of pressure on myself to, quote, get the song right. And the biggest block that I ran into, and I've actually talked about this song on past episodes, was the later verse along with the bridge didn't speak to the concept of the song, which was never fitting in. And so I had a lot of trouble writing that particular verse, writing that bridge. I even thought about cutting the verse at one point, but I realized there was still some story that needed to be told. It was just a real struggle. And that's really the reason it took me 18 months, right? I didn't choose for it to take that long. It was not intentional. It just happened largely because of that particular block. And yeah, I made some tweaks here and there to other lyrics that I had, other melodies that I had, but it really was that verse and that bridge that was really, really getting me. And that caused this long experience of writing this song for 18 months. I learned a lot from it. And so I'm going to break down the 3 lessons that I learned. And number 1 is that it's okay to put your song on the shelf every so often, right? And so whether you are aware of it or not, you're in a relationship with your song. Sometimes you need your space. And there were times where, because of this block that I was experiencing specifically with that later verse as well as the bridge, I started to feel frustrated. And I felt like I was forcing certain things, forcing certain lyrics that still didn't really make sense. And I felt like the best thing was to take a step away from it, right? And I think when I did that, I got some clarity in terms of where I needed to go with the song and maybe the words that I needed to choose, whether I did some just free-form journaling on the experience, just putting it on the shelf and taking a step back really helped me get that direction. And, after numerous dustings, so to speak, I took it off the shelf. And each time I took it off the shelf, I made some progress, right? And the most recent time that I took it off the shelf is when I felt like I was able to get to a finalized version. So all this to say is that putting it on the shelf every so often, while it may feel like you're taking longer because you're putting it on the shelf and because you're taking time away from it, it might feel like you're losing time. You might actually be gaining time because that investment away from the song could actually be helpful in the long run. So something to think about. Lesson number 2 that I learned from this 18-month experience was that it's good to seek consistent feedback from others, but I would limit it to just a few people. After I had taken a little bit of a break from songwriting because I was super focused on my coaching at that time, because I was diving back in, everyone and their mom was giving me feedback on this song. And I think it led me to being a little bit overwhelmed. I feel like writing a song sometimes is like getting a tattoo. You can literally get a tattoo of anything. The overwhelming amount of choices as well as feedback can create this overwhelm. And I definitely was feeling that in the beginning. And so I kind of vowed to myself that I would keep it to a specific circle of people in terms of feedback. One being a colleague, another being a mentor of mine, and really just keeping that circle tight. So that was a lesson that I really learned was feedback is good, but you don't need feedback from the entire planet. So that's definitely something to think about. Lesson number 3, which I find to be the most important and most overlooked lesson, and that's that you should perform that unfinished song live. I think we have this inkling, this feeling as songwriters that we need to get a song to a finished status before we perform it for the first time. But I actually kind of feel like maybe we need to perform it in order to finish it. Because there are so many different subtleties and intricacies that you're going to learn through playing live, and there's just no substitute for it. The different rhythms that you come up with singing live or playing your guitar live or playing whatever it is, different melodies that maybe you experiment with when you're playing live. There's just no simulation for it. And I really think performing the song, even when it's unfinished, can really help you get some information. And sometimes that information is learning what doesn't work, learning what sucks. And one of the things I learned, so I performed this 3 times, this song, twice while I was on tour over the summer of 2023. Both shows happened to be in Vermont and different places of Vermont. And then I performed it for my students at our Green Mountain Songwriting Retreat, which was this past September. And one of the things I learned is that the tempo was way too fast. And so I knew that I needed to make that adjustment, not only for playing it live, but also for the future recording. So sometimes it's finding out what doesn't work that is going to benefit you to making that a better song, but you're not going to find out a lot of those things unless you perform them live. So I think this is a really overlooked strategy, feeling like it's got to be finished before we debut it, right? I would say play it, and then from there you can make adjustments and you'll be better for it and your song will be better for it. Cool. Okay. So to conclude these 3 lessons, if I were to summarize them in 3 messages, number 1 is that it's okay to put your song on the shelf every so often. Just don't forget about it completely. Don't put it on the shelf and have it sit there for the next decade, right? Number 2 is to seek and implement feedback, but you don't need it from the entire planet, right? Keep your circle tight. Keep it to a select few, right? If you're in a songwriter group like my songwriting students are, maybe you limit it to just them. Maybe that's your circle of feedback. And number 3 is that you should perform that unfinalized song, that unfinished song. I think it will help the song. I think it will help you as a musician. It will help you as a songwriter. Okay, that's pretty much it. I feel really good about this song. I'm excited to share it eventually. I'm working on a couple other things before I dive into the production of this song, but I'm really excited to share it with you all. And I hope this episode, as always, brought you some value. So yeah, happy writing, and talk to you next time for episode 101. Thanks to all of y'all who have listened to every episode or have even listened to just one episode. I really appreciate it. And most importantly, I hope it has brought you some value, and I hope it has helped you in your songwriting journey. That is ultimately what I care about. So yeah, have a great week and talk to you soon.